Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Alliance webinar, Create Your Own Emergency Resource Guide, presented by Timotheus Gordon. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. Today's webinar is being presented by the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance, and it is co-sponsored by the University of Illinois at Chicago's Institute on Disability and Human Development. The Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance is proud to be an investment of the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. My name is Christine Beck, and I am the Organizational Director of the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Alliance's website and Facebook page. In addition, it will be sent out to all of the participants on today's call. All attendees are in listen-only mode. During the polls, and if you wish to communicate with Timotheus, you are welcome to type in using your control panel. In addition, there are 3 handouts that are available for you to download. You simply go to your control panel to handouts. Those include the PowerPoint from today's webinar, as well as the COVID-19 resources for marginalized communities, the COVID-19 resources for people with disabilities in marginalized communities, both the English version and the Spanish version. So a little bit about who we are. The Alliance is a network of advocates and self-advocacy groups around Illinois. And the image on the screen is 15 people, some standing and some sitting. All are holding white pieces of paper. This picture depicts the most recent graduating class of the Alliance's Ambassador Leadership Training Program participants. Our vision is for self-advocates to work together to get the support we need and to live the life we want in the community. Our mission is to speak up for ourselves and for each other while working together to make changes in our communities and in Illinois. The Alliance's focus is on empowering people to speak up about what they want and need, what they don't want and don't need, to action plan their goals, and to participate in advocacy at the personal, agency, community, and statewide levels. And what does the Alliance do? We do a lot of different things. We support local groups. We work together on important issues. We offer networking, advocacy, and learning opportunities through our monthly newsletters, our webinars, the Alliance Ambassador Leadership Program, and the Training Institute. And the image on the upper right-hand side of your screen is a person with pink skin, short brown hair, wearing glasses, and holding papers. So the Alliance is a network of self-advocates and self-advocacy groups, and currently we have 37 member groups all around Illinois. And the image on the screen is an outline of the state of Illinois with stars indicating where member groups are located. Up north in Illinois, we have member groups in Dixon, McHenry, Zion. The city of Chicago and the surrounding area is well represented with groups in Alsop, Aurora, Brookfield, the city of Chicago, Chicago Heights, Elgin, Evanston, Evergreen Park, Hanover Park, Homewood, Mount Prospect, Rolling Meadows, and Westmont. In the central part of the state, the Alliance has member groups in Rock Island, Pontiac, Galesburg, Tremont, Bloomington, Beardstown, Jacksonville, Decatur, and Monticello. And in the southern part of the state, there are member groups in Alton, Edwardsville, Mattoon, Charleston, and Paris. No matter where you live, no matter where you work, no matter where you play, chances are there is a self-advocate or self-advocacy group near you speaking up and speaking out. And with that, I would like you to meet the presenter, Timotheus T.J. Gordon Jr. Take it away, TJ.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is TJ, and if you see my picture on the right-hand side, I am wearing glasses, I'm wearing a knit cap, and I also have a mustache, dark brown eyes, and brown skin, and I am smiling. I'm still smiling in front of the camera right now, even though I'm not wearing a knit cap because it is close to summer. But welcome to the Create Your Own Resource Guide webinar. And before we get into the webinar, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. I am the co-chair of Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition, or Chicagoland DPOC. I am a researcher for the Institute on Disability and Human Development, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. We'd like to, in recent events that took place this weekend and what's going on right now, we would like to give a quick moment of silence to all the people affected by what's going on in the world this past few days. And we definitely would like to keep people with disabilities in marginalized communities in mind, especially people of color with disabilities, immigrants with disabilities, and people with disabilities who identify themselves as lesbian, gay, bisexual, anywhere in the LGBTQIA spectrum. We are with you all, and we will make sure that you all will be protected. And that's part of the reason why we are doing this webinar today, to provide the resources and to help you all create the resources that can help marginalized communities and communities in general get through these times. And with that being said, let's begin. All right, next slide, please. So, as always, what do? We speak up and speak out. So our first question is, did you watch or check out last week's COVID-19 resources for people with disabilities in marginalized communities webinar? You may go to the quick poll and select yes or no, and we will reveal the results shortly.
All right, so again, this is Christine, and this is an opportunity for you to participate in today's webinar by speaking up and speaking out. So we've launched a quick poll. Did you watch or check out last week's COVID-19 resources for people with disabilities in marginalized communities webinar, either live or recorded? And I realize that if you are joining us and listening through your phone, you are not able to answer this. But go ahead and complete that poll. We are going to close it and show the answers. And guess what? 100% of those reporting said, yep, we watched it or we checked it out. So thank you so much.
And if you all haven't seen the webinar, and it's okay, you can also go to the Illinois Self-Advocacy website or Facebook page as well to check out the recording at any time. Also, in addition to seeing our webinar from last week, have you checked out the COVID-19 resources for people with disabilities and marginalized communities? And you can do the same thing. You can select yes or no in the quick poll, and we will reveal the results shortly. And keep in mind that it is available in both English and Spanish.
All right, and it looks like our polling is complete, so we'll go ahead and close it and share those results. And so, TJ, what did the survey say?
100% say yes.
All right.
That is great.
That's very good.
All right, so people may ask us, why create your own resource list? There's many resource lists out there already. I mean, besides the resource list that we provided last week, there's resource lists from your organization, there's resource lists from your city, from your state, or even from your country if you live in another country or if you're overseas or whatever or whatnot. But the reason why we encourage people to create their own list is to provide information on resources available to your specific local area or community. There's some resources out there that covers mainly your community or your local area, and it might not be available anywhere else. So it is good to have like a collection of resources that you could go to quickly in your own neighborhood or your own community, as opposed to looking through state resources or even city resources to find what you're looking for. Also, as you all may been hearing about in the news, some local areas may have rules or laws related to COVID-19 that are different from the statewide rules. For instance, in Chicago, the phase 3 of reopening the state will not start until tomorrow, even though there are some places in Illinois that have been reopened since last week or earlier than that in some instances. So by creating your own resource list, we could inform people not only what's going on statewide with reopening the state and with COVID-19, but also what's going on in your local area. And when we talk about reopening your area or resources in your area related to COVID-19. If you go to the next slide, yes. What would a resource list look like? What a resource list could look like? Well, it could look like a resource list could come in many forms. You could have a hard copy of a resource list Or if you're able to download a resource list like ours in PDF or electronic form, that's one way to get to a resource list. If you don't have access to a printer or a computer, you can also have a notebook and write down details of which resource that people could go to. You can write down many things like where to get food, where to get medical help, lots of things. And we will go over details of what to put on the resources in a few minutes. You can also turn your resources into a PowerPoint presentation. You could gather a few people at your home or at your organization, or you could also create your own webinar where you can show people resources online in a PowerPoint form. Your resources could look like series of videos, and you can do it in many ways. For instance, some people could record themselves talking about certain resources. You can have yourself, or you can have people with you take pictures or record you going to the store, and you can use that video to show people this store is open, or this bank, or this clothing store is open. Or you can also watch other videos, and if you have something like Facebook or YouTube, you could create a playlist of resources that are in video form too, and you can share it with as many people as you want. And the last thing they will talk about as far as what a resource list could look like is something called a database. What we mean by a database is a online website where all the resources are in one place. So if you have Google Drive, Dropbox, or any app or website that collects lots of data, you could go to that website and find many things that you looking for in your area or in your community. And for some that might be easier, others may prefer the notebook with information. Both of them are okay. Whatever works for you, that's what your resources could look like. It could look like whatever you want it to look like, as long as it works for you and the people in your community. So no matter what type of resources you have, it should have a few key things. So we'll go over the 5 important things that a resources must have. There are people who may have trouble reading small fonts without glasses, or they may have low vision, or they may have disabilities that affect their vision. So to help people with visual disabilities, we recommend that you make your resource list make your resource list available in large fonts so that it'll be easier to read without having trouble to read something smaller. And if you're writing something, make sure that you write in large letters as best you can, or if you typing up a resource list, make sure you use a font that's at least a size 16 or 18, so that more people could read it much easier. Also, if you can, make sure you have an image description, captioning, or some type of brief description of the resource guide. We have to, again, to keep in mind that there's people with disabilities where they may not be able to hear the resource guide or listen to the resource guide because of their disability. So, or they may not be able to see the images as well. So it is best to, if you're doing videos, then it's best to caption your videos if you can, or if not, give a brief description of what's in the resource guide, or give a brief description of what is in this particular part of the resource guide. That way it can help people go through the resource list easier. And for image description, if you can, describe what the image looks like to the best of your ability. And a good example is how I describe my picture. I describe what I wear, what I look like, if I have hair or not. Any appropriate description for images will do. We also have to consider that people speak in languages other than English. Some speak Spanish, some speak Arabic, some may speak American Sign Language. And we want to make sure that resource lists are available to anybody who speaks any language. So make sure that your resource list is not only in English, but it's also available in many different languages. If you're able to translate into many languages, that's great. If not, it's okay. You could always ask somebody to translate into different languages for you. Your resources must, sorry, your resources must have, must be in plain language. Basically, what we mean by plain language is how, it's basically, Christine, if you could help me explain with plain language, it's basically
Sure.
making sure that it's a language that everybody could understand, and not something that only a few people understand.
Well, that was a perfect description of plain language. Just using words and making sure it's in language that the most people can understand. You don't need to use big words or lots of sentences. If smaller words and shorter sentences will get the point across.
Thank you. And if we go to the next slide. Oh, wait, there's more essentials. Not only we have to make sure that we have access to the resource list and making sure that everybody has access to the list, we also have to add 3 important things as well. Excuse me. First thing we must add is what is COVID-19 and safety tips in how to recognize if you have it, what to do if you have it, and how to be safe, a lot of people don't know what COVID-19 is. They may think, oh, because he's sneezing, you may have COVID-19, but that is not the case. In our resource guide, there is examples of the symptoms that you may have with COVID-19 and what to do if you have one of those symptoms. And also, as far as safety tips, there's, making sure that you have a mask, making sure that you practice social distancing and things of that nature. And we discussed this. Now, if you would like to learn more about COVID-19 safety tips, you may check out our webinar for last week, and it will give you a little more detail of what each of those things means. Another thing that you want to add is, what is social distancing and what do people mean by shelter in place? People are also misinformed about those two things, especially shelter in place. Some people think of shelter in place as a lockdown. It is not a lockdown. Well, I don't know, considering what's been going on the last few days, I don't know. But in a perfect world, it is not a lockdown. A shelter in place is basically a set of rules and guidelines that can help you stay safe from COVID-19. And you can still do things like go to the store, walk your dog, etc., and much more, rather. Social distancing is another thing that people often is misinformed about. What social distancing is basically making sure that you give people as much space as possible so that you won't catch COVID-19 or give it to somebody else. So, for instance, make sure that you're 6 feet away from each other. You should put that in the resource list. Or what to do if you're not able to stand 6 feet away in a store or riding the bus or the train. You should also put that in social distancing part of the resource list. And lastly,
Continue recording. We had a momentary outage of internet capacity, so I apologize for that, everyone, and thank you for being patient while I got things going again. So this is where we left the essentials for resource list 2. You had talked about shelter in place. You're finishing up social distancing. So TJ, if you could just say a couple words about the third dot point, and then we'll continue on. And again, thank you so much for your patience.
we appreciate your patience. And to recap the third point, even though Illinois has a universal shelter in place for all regions to follow in some form or fashion, your mayor, your county leader, or your leaders in your area can also add more things to the shelter in place specific to your community or your city or your town, wherever you live. So you'll also want to add information on your local version of the shelter in place if your mayor or your county leader or whoever have shelter in place rules in addition to the one in Illinois. All right, so the next thing that we'll talk about is Restore Illinois. That is a great resource to add to your resource list. Restore Illinois is our governor's 5-step plan in how to reopen the state. And he's doing it, he divided the state into 4 regions. And depending on how things go in your area, if COVID-19 cases are going down, or if any treatment or vaccines are available, a region of Illinois could move ahead in the next phase of reopening. The ultimate reopening phase will be phase 5, where everything is open. Once you find a cure or vaccine or more treatment. But there's other phases where the things will slowly reopen. And we can talk about that more on the next slide. So as we are at today, we are at phase 3 of Restore Illinois. Most part of the states are in phase 3. And as I mentioned earlier, Chicago will be in phase 3 tomorrow, hopefully. But in phase 3 of Restore Illinois, the rate of infection is either steady or it's going down, it's declining. And also hospitalizations are decreasing and there's more hospital beds available. With that being said, if your area goes to phase 3, you are still required to wear a mask or some type of face covering in public. But in public, you could join gatherings to up to 10 people or less. So let's say if you want to go to the park with family or a few friends, you can do so now, as long as it's 10 or under. And so that industries could begin return to workplaces with social distancing and sanitation practices in place. So let's say if you're working, if your job says you can come back to work in the building, you can. As long as your workplace says you got to practice social distancing and also make sure that the place is clean and tidy at all times. Let's say if you want to go shopping for clothes or other things other than food and important stuff, you could go to those stores again. But the retail stores like Joanne or clothing stores could only let certain amount of people at a time. And even when you're inside, make sure to practice social distancing as well. That was where we at right now with phase 3. But that's not all you can add on the resource list. While we want to make sure that the list is accessible to everybody, and we make sure that we have information on COVID-19, the Restore Illinois plan, and the shelter in place order in not only the state, but in your area. You can also add more things to resources as well. You could put in there where to find food. If your place delivers, if there's a food pantry that's nearby, if your place of worship, your school, or your organization is giving away food, put that on your resource list. And if you're living in Chicago, if you know of any stores that's still open, you can let people know for the resource list. You could go to this store today, but you can't go to that store because that store closed, but you can still go to a store nearby. Or you can also add in there places that deliver food too. You could add resources about cloth mask as far as where to find cloth mask. There are a lot of online stores that sell masks. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of in-person stores you could go to buy masks now too. So you could go to those two places. You could go to an online store like Amazon or Etsy or your local Walmart to get a mask. You could go to places in your area, again, like a church or your Scylla or your center for independent living that gives out masks from time to time. Or you can also find people that either make or sell masks too. Or you can also get the resources to make your own mask. I like to make my own masks as well. And I was able to do that because I found websites where I could make my own. So you could put information about cloth mask in the resource fair. You could also put in there, where can I find a hospital, for instance, in my area, or a free clinic if I'm sick or hurt for any reason, in addition to if you think you have COVID-19, you can even find a free clinic in your area that tests for COVID-19 too. With a lot of things that's going on in the world and a lot of stress that's going on, I strongly believe that it is important to add mental health resources too. It could be a listing of mental health clinics that people could go to or mental health groups. You can also put mental health hotlines in your list too, so that let's say if somebody is stressed or having a hard time, if they're not able to go to a clinic, they could call somebody for help. You could also put information on finding your legislator in your area too. If you need to find your U.S. senator and congressperson, if you need to find somebody in your state or in your local area, like your alderman or any legislator locally, you could put websites to find those people so that you can reach out to them, and so you could get the information and advocate for your needs. And the last thing we will talk about, I have 15 minutes left, 16 minutes actually, so I'll get through the last two things quickly. It's a good idea to put mutual aid in your resource list. What I mean by mutual aid is basically a system where we help each other out with resources. For instance, my neighbor could go out to me to help me deliver groceries or bring me medicine or take me to the doctor, and I can help my neighbor cleaning up or with sharing movies, things of that nature. It's basically a system to help each other out. And lastly, please add advocacy groups to your list too, especially advocacy groups within Alliance. They will be a great resource in how to help get through COVID-19 and also the recent events from this past weekend. And also, if people want to learn how to advocate for themselves and other people, put information on where to find local advocacy groups where people could join and connect with advocates. If you go to the next slide, it's just a lot of things that you can add on the resource guide. There's so many things you could do with the resource list. We could go on and on, but we'd like to highlight a few more things that you can add to your list. You can add information on your local CILs or Centers for Independent Living. And for those who don't know what a CIL is, it's a place like Access Living that provide resources for people with disabilities to advocate for themselves and others, but also live independently as they can in the community as well. And they might have information on housing, employment, and other things. You can also add information on local government offices, but definitely, if you can, add 80 departments for people with disabilities. There are some places where they have departments specifically for people with disabilities, and they have a list of resources. If they don't have a specific department for people with disabilities, your local place may still have resources for people with disabilities, but it might be under a different office. You could add resources from your school, whether it's from elementary school to high school or college, and the resources could be anything from anything related to the classroom to what fun stuff to do while you're in school or while you're dealing with school stuff. If you're in a marginalized community in your area, especially if you're a person of color, there are resources and groups in your area that could help marginalized people, especially with what's going on today. I think that's an important resource to add to your list. And I think I mentioned this one also briefly, but let's say if you have, if you're not able to go to the grocery store, but if you know of grocery stores that deliver, like Top Box, Amazon, or Instacart, add that to your local resource guide. And I talk a lot about serious and essential stuff, but who wants to be bored during COVID-19? I don't want to be bored. You don't want to be bored. Your friends don't want to be bored. Your family don't want to be bored. And now that the state is slowly reopened, it's a great time to find fun things to do in your area. So if you want to add stuff about what's going on at a park, your drive-in theater, or if you want to share cool things about your hobbies, anything fun, put down your resource guide. Or let's say if you want to get involved in self-advocacy campaigns related to COVID-19 or combating police brutality against marginalized people, especially disabled people in those communities, you can add local self-advocacy campaigns to the guide. And you may add protests too if you want, but keep in mind, we do not condone anything violent, peaceful protest, not anything violent. And lastly, anything helpful in the disability community, you can add to the list. Anything that you think would be good for people with disabilities in your area, outside of what we talked about, add it. Anything helps is great. If you go to the next slide. Oh yes, more stuff. See, again, we can talk about this all day. But another set of things you can add to your resource guide. Let's say if you don't want to call 911, but if you want to report something that's going on in your neighborhood, or if you need assistance, but you're scared to call the 911 number, you could put 9 emergency phone numbers from your local police or fire departments in the list. That could also be helpful if you just want to report, if your cat or dog is stuck in a tree, you need somebody to get it, but you don't want to send an ambulance or lots of police on the scene. My emergency phone numbers will help. Or let's say if your pet needs medical care, make sure to put emergency vet information in your resource guide. Or I'll also like to add, if your pets need food, you can also add information on where to get pet food too. Also, just in case something happens to you health-wise, have a number for your local hospital, or if you get poisoned or if somebody gets poisoned, it is good to have the poison control contact information in your resource guide too, so that people could go to that contact and figure out what to do from there if you get poisoned or if somebody you know is poisoned. And lastly, let's say you want to pay your electric, phone, or gas bill, or let's say if you're having issues with your electric devices or your phone or your gas or your heat, it is good if you add numbers for your local electric, phone, and gas companies in the list, especially if you can't go to them in person, but you can still go to them through the phone, or if they have a website, you can put their website information too. All right, next slide. So I think that's a lot of resources you can put in the list, but let's speak up and speak out about one particular thing. Out of all the resources out there, there's much more that we can add. So what are some other information you would like to add to your resource guide? And feel free to type in your answer in the chat box, and we could talk about other resources that we can add to our resource guide.
All right, so this is Christine, and thank you, TJ. So we're asking those of you who would like to speak up and speak out. What other information would you add to your resource guide? TJ gave lots of examples of things that you could add to a resource guide, but maybe there's something in addition that you would add to your particular resource guide because it's important to you and important to your family, your community. So go ahead and type it in using your control panel. What other information would you add to your resource guide? So let's see. Oh, here you go. Maybe it is a mobile beauty stylist or barber. Sometimes people can get out and go to to get their hair cut or their hair done. Other times they can't get out, so maybe there is a mobile stylist or barber who can come to your house. Great information to know. I know the same thing with vets and pet groomers. Sometimes people can get out and take their animals to the vet, and sometimes they can't. Maybe having information about your bank, so that if there's an emergency and you can't get on the internet to look up the number for your bank, you could go to your resource guide and flip through the pages or get on the computer and know the number to your bank. Those are all good things to have. Anybody else have any other ideas on what you should have? You might want to include the number to your pharmacy, or maybe a number to your doctors. Again, if the electricity went out or the internet went out and you couldn't look up the information and you didn't have a good old-fashioned phone book, not sure if they make those anymore, you could just go to your resource guide and get that information. It's good for right now. It's just good to be prepared. And this is all about being prepared. All right. I don't see any others coming in. Oh, hold on a second. We do have something. How about a number or website to a wellness or health store if you need to order vitamins? A lot of people visit nutrition centers and different locations to get vitamins and other supplements. Maybe they don't get it from their pharmacy, or they don't take prescription medications. But just think about the things that you use or you do regularly, or not even regularly, and writing down that information. Maybe you're away from home and somebody could get that information to you. It's just good to be prepared. Very good to be prepared. All right, I think that's it for the suggestions, TJ. So let's go to the next slide. And thank you, everyone, for sharing those.
Yeah, thank you. And there are, as we discussed in the previous slides, there's so many things that you can put on the resource list. There's so many things that people are looking for in the resource list. But there might be some things that you can't find in your local area, no matter what you do. Or something that you can't put on the resource list because it may not be in your area specifically. That's okay. If you cannot find what you're looking for in your local resource list, you can always go to our statewide resource list to get an idea of what to look for. You can ask your self-advocacy group, your agency or organization, your place of worship, or any group that you're a part of, if they know of local resources. They can either point you to the direction of a place that has what you need, or they might have what you need. Let's say if you can't go to a group, who else you can turn to? You can ask somebody you know and trust, like your family or friends. Your family and friends may also have information that you need or resources that you need. If all else fails, Google it, search it online, and it will give you some ideas too of what you look for. So let's speak up and speak out. Yay! So the next question we want to ask you all in a quick poll: do you plan on creating your own resource guide? And you can select yes or no on the poll, and we could share the results in a few moments.
All
We'd
right.
like to know, yeah.
Yeah, this is Christine, and that's all right. I'm looking for that poll. I am not finding it on my control panel. So maybe what we have you do is just type in, if you're able, using your control panel, do you plan on creating your own resource guide? Yes or no? Or maybe you already have one started. Do you plan on adding to it? So go ahead and type in using your control panel. Can't find that poll on my control panel. Yep. So do you plan on creating your own resource guide? So let us know. Do you plan on creating that? All right. And we do have some folks joining us via the phone, and they are unable to type in using their control panel. But I'm hoping that even if you aren't able to speak up and speak out by typing into your control panel, it's a resounding yes, that you do plan on creating your own resource guide, no matter what form it takes, just something that you would be able to use if the need arose. Oh, there's my dog saying hello, and I'll go to this final screen for TJ.
All right. So, speaking of creating your own resource guide, I am creating my own resource guide for Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition, where we will have information on what is COVID-19, what does it mean for people in Chicago, and also the resources that we mentioned will be on that database too. And later on, we will post the information in the Alliance Facebook page. In the meantime, that is all that I have for the webinar. If you would like to learn more about make your own resource guide, if you have questions about the statewide resource guide, or if you have just any general questions or want to chit chat, you may reach me at chicagolanddpoc@gmail.com, or my work email, which is tgordo7@uic.edu.
Many thanks to TJ for lending his experience and expertise, not only in the development of the COVID-19 resource for people with disabilities in marginalized communities, but also in the development and presentation of last week's webinar, as well as today's webinar. So if you'd like to connect with the Alliance, you can email us at info@selfadvocacyalliance.org. Check out our website and all the recorded webinars, as well as other resources at selfadvocacyalliance.org. And you can also find us and like us on Facebook by searching for Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. And the image on the upper right-hand corner of your screen is a person with pink skin, short brown hair, raising the right hand in a fist. The person is wearing a purple shirt with the words "Ask Me About the Alliance" written in white. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us, learning with and from us about developing a resource guide. As TJ said, please be kind to each other. Be safe. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.